underlined.
Every part of the underline. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read this part. I'm going to go to the counterplan and legitimacy 7.
All right, so it's tax, counterplan, legitimacy?
Yes.
All right.
Legitimacy. This is going to sound weird because I already read the highlighted part. Whatever.
Just read the parts that are underlined but not highlighted.
That's what I'm going to do, but it's going to be like French.
I'm sure the owner of the highlighted was correcting this too.
Yeah, fair enough. Cyrus did teach me how to highlight. In Missouri, recently against two school districts, appeals from the 8th Circuit upheld the order. Is also outlined procedure for district court to order tax increases at a rate of the state constitutional limits and directed state official to levy and collect a surcharge and state income tax. The 8th Circuit Court recognized the district court's broad equitable powers to remedy the state evils of segregation, including narrowly defined power in order to increase the local tax levies on the real estate, and upheld the district court's tax increase orders. They say rollback, but first of all, there was evidence is not specific to remedies that comply with international agreements. The court will not validate or implementation of legislation 200 years of precedence on our side. This is Mariko and Stevens, 2004. The court reasoned that the person without property of the United States doesn't cannot regulate them after the decision the U.S. entered into the Treaty with Great Britain signed on behalf of Canada's territorial protection, migratory birds, and implementing legislation. What's over the treaty were attacking the U.S. Supreme Court holds concluded implementing legislation is a valid exercise of congressional power. No Supreme Court case ever challenged Holland's understanding of the scope of implementing legislation in reference to the 10th Amendment and limiting each understanding that is reaffirmed the Reed v. Covert. The modern examples of the court's reference to treaty power consistent with 200 years of doctrinal precedent. And next, they're conceding that the court is still going to uphold, that's the court going to uphold inter-act agreements. Now, they say economic predictability, but they don't solve this. They can only fiat that the court will adhere to the precedent in the future. This isn't enough to solve business competence. The fact that, I don't know if you're familiar with Morrison, but the right decision, it proves that the courts can rule essentially opposite ways without overruling precedent. Additionally, turn overruling decision crushed business confidence and legal certainty. This is Healy in 2001. And agreeing to follow established rules, the courts enabled individuals to predict legal consequences, and individuals or businesses are able to predict the circumstances under which the courts enforce contracts. The courts routinely change legal rules. People hesitate to risk the money in pursuit of goals and will ultimately be through authority and more evidence overriding kills business predictability. Investments is sure. 87 most commonly offered to CNJ to claim reasons for choosing strong over the weak presidential concerning the principle of predictability when decision maker will decide the case in the same way. The last parties will be able to anticipate the future. Predictability is desirable. We take predictability, however, only diminishing the ability to adapt to changes, and U.S. economic decline will affect the global economy. Global cyclical counterbalance in the U.S. decline. This is market needs international on 329. Even if the U.S. growth is down, it will be enough to derail still booming global economy. No set of senior currency strategies to Bank of New York, other countries and economies are doing well to offset any decline in U.S. growth. Now, they say permutation, but this doesn't solve it. Want to see solvency evidence proves that the congressional agreement is going to be the best way to solve integration because it's not specific to gender factor integration, it's specific to all discrimination, and this would ultimately link to the legitimacy net benefit because they still overrule a decision, the Milliken decision. And next is turn courts do not produce change. They cause movements to change focus from sexual legislation to unsuccessful litigation. This is Rosenberg in 91. The courts act as fly paper social reforms that come to the allure of litigation. Courts and sell to produce a significant social reform. The courts will also limit change by deflecting claims, sustaining political battles or successes, permeable the harmless legal loans are not the courts. And the ideological function of the lure movements to social reform is such a structurally concerning that services need providing the illusion change. This answers the court's key to social change argument and proves that the permutation was still linked to the tax. This ad because people will go to the courts and that would lead to an increase in property taxes, linking them back to the argument. Now, additionally, they said the permutation increased legitimacy, but their evidence from Columbia is empirically denied by the inherency. The affirmative proves that the court has failed to cave congressional pressure in the status quo, and if they concede the impact proves that the dissent will ultimately, our legitimacy dissent will still turn this back to this argument, and there's still links or overrule links because they destroy start aside system legitimacy. Now, they say multiple actor fiat bad, but first, it's not multiple actor fiat, it's a single international agreement process. Second, sci-fi's will check and basically speak first and last time. Next is multiple actors increase education because the multiple processes about the government leading more real world policy education. We concede on the framework debate that policy education is best, and even if they win, this is just a reason to reject the counterplay, not the team. Dissent. On top, the dissent outweighs 100% risk of the advantage. Jason, what turns gates, we see concede decrease in democratic model is internally the world's worst atrocity, including racism, segregation, and these points magnitude countries of strong democracy, most likely to use weapons of mass destruction, the conflict guaranteeing extinction. These points probable time frame stronger democratic model solves systemic atrocities inevitably escalating to conflicts causing extinction. Now, they say no spillover, but first of all, this doesn't assume the transition. I want to see evidence is very specific that a overrule in the transition will send a jolt to the legal system, will ultimately destroy this. That's a want to see Gerhardt evidence, and more evidence due to intense scrutiny during the transition. Justice about to uphold our decisive vote destroying legitimacy and independent judiciaries. Washington Post Post on October 2nd, Robertson and Alito, well, should take into account start size and terminally close to Washington. They want to make it look as the only reason for change here is that they're different people here. They want to make it clear the principles dictated the outcome. And next, they say that they turn the impact because of democracy, but it's not, they absolve democracy, but it's not across the Larkin's evidence that rule of law is ultimately key to democracy because the political judiciary is perceived as being tyrannical and not listening to the will of people, turning back all their democracy arguments. They say that overrule Brown, but our argument is that the Supreme Court uses minimalist decisions and will distinguish in the status quo. So even if they win, the Brown will be overruled. Special justification will preserve legitimacy while overruling precedent. This is Lee in 2002. Legitimacy judicial reviews horrible will be the court's decision for allowed application. Membership cases for fall by the overruling judicial review undermines legitimacy. Changes suggested resulting doctrines, predilections of individuals rather than reason. Special justification provides a mean of predicting legitimacy. The most vulnerable point, the overruling precedent. More evidence. The new court will use special justification for precedent while overruling precedent. Sellers in 2006. The Supreme Rule of start decisis does not clarify circumstantial which the courts will be overruled and deviate from the ground precedent. American courts do not overturn precedents lightly, and when they say the always could be citation no prior case of precedent, reinstating the opinions of scholars or whatever other courts and authorities found supporting interpretation of law. Now they say that we're not solving democracy in the status quo, but this is uniqueness for our argument that strong rule of law is key is the only thing that's preserving the democracies from collapsing in the status quo. We need to preserve rule of law in order to create this credible balance. Now they say we don't solve democracy, but it's set across the 1C Larkin's evidence that democratic transitions hang in the balance right now. Transitioning democracies need a strong rule of law to prove the Supreme Court will be accountable to the people and not be a tyrannical structure of government. They say changing the race structure is key, but the counterplan is ultimately going to solve back any risk of this turn. And democracy is ultimately going to be key to stopping racism. To classify that from the overview, and more evidence that every individual decision attacks the credibility of the independent judiciary's models to center justice accountability. In 2014, the United States sets an important example in these issues. The international communities affirm the right of the independent judiciary defense universally recognize human rights and principal actual practices in the nations other justified to be by reference. And the economy of the United States, much of the world models itself after the country's day-to-day implementation, expression traditions, ruling day-to-day implementation of modeling cells of the short-term and impact of their.
They say uniqueness overwhelms the link.
And they say uniqueness overwhelms the link, but that's answered above that every decision, that's a Washington Times evidence, that every decision is being looked at the status quo, and our Center for Justice Accountability evidence says that each individual decision will be modeled by other countries.
Did you read it in terms of the case, right? Isn't that like legitimacy of the court?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
They were the for me on the counter.
All right.